I'm very happy to have all of you with us, and thank you for those that are still joining us. My name is Sharon Banek. I'm the Executive Director of the California-Israel Chamber of Commerce, a non-for-profit organization that has an office in California and another one in Israel, which is managed by my colleague Tammy Dorst, which is also here, at least on my screen, to the left of my picture. And we are very happy to have all of you joining another educational seminar together with our partners that I'm going to introduce in a bit about the US employment, how to avoid the pitfalls in the US employment. So we are going to cover today a lot of topics. We are going to start with, where do I start, right? How do I employ people? Where do I find them? What do I need to know in terms of legal the employment laws? Visas is a big issue if you are not US citizens or if you don't have a green card. So we are going to also discuss some visas issues. We're going to talk about the differences between having an in-house HR versus outsourcing HR services. We are going also to hear from people with hands-on experience about how they started, how is it like for them. COVID-19 changed everything we know, right, about working in the office. Now we work from home, we have remote workers, people work from different states. Can we cut their salaries? What do we do? I know tons of questions you all have, and we are here to try and answer at least some of them. So before we go around the room and introduce our speakers for today, I want to go and mention some housekeeping issues regarding today's seminar. So today's seminar is going to have two parts. The first part is the next 30 minutes or so, where we are going to introduce our speakers and give you some highlights of the topics we are going to later on discuss in our breakout room. Thank you all for signing up and for signing up to topics that are of interest to you. This is exactly what we want to have. So after the 30 minutes, we are going to break into 3 rooms that are going to discuss different topics. We are going to have our moderators in each one of the rooms, and I will explain about this in a minute. But once we finish with the plenary, you will see a message on your screen that says, go to breakout room. All you need to do is just click on that button and you will be transferred to your room. Those discussion rooms are really a discussion rooms. We call it discussion rooms because we want to have your questions. And this is why we have our experts, and this is where we have our HR managers to help you figure out all those questions that you have. So please don't be shy. This is your chance to ask questions, really get advice from our expert about the things that matter to you. So we'll have about 45 minutes in the breakout room to ask you all your questions. We really want to encourage you to participate. As I said, please share your cameras with us so we can have this an interactive conversation. We also have a surprise booklet that we prepared for you. So we are going to send these booklets at the end of the session to all of you, where you have highlights of everything that we are going to speak about today. This is also where you have the contact information to all of the speakers for today, and you can always go back to them and ask them more detailed questions that are relevant to you, to your company, and to the situation where you are at. All right, so let me go around the room and start with the speakers that we have. I'm sorry, there is no particular order that I'm going around the room, just according to what I see on my screen. So Jeff Foskey, you'll go first. Jeff Foskey is a partner at Fox Rothschild. We know each other for a very long time, been a very good friend of the CICC and our HR community, at least here in California. We've been doing a lot of seminars regarding HR in the last 2 years. We see so many differences in terms of the law. We started with cannabis, and then we had Me Too, and now we have COVID-19 and work from home. Thank you, Jeff, for being with us.
Oh, Sharon, thank you. Thank you for having me. Again, my name is Jeff Polsky. I've been practicing employment law for over 30 years now. My firm, Fox Rothschild, has over 900 attorneys spread between 28 offices. I am a co-chair of our Labor and Employment Department. We offer a wide range of services and have a practice group dedicated to working with Israeli clients and meeting their legal needs. In fact, one of the co-chairs of that practice group, Michael Sweet, is on the call with us.
Thank you, Jeff, and we will see you later on again in the rooms. But I have one question for you. From all these topics that we've been covering together in the last 2 years, what do you think is the pressing issue for 2021 for people to pay attention to in terms of employment law?
I think it's making sure that people are paid correctly. That includes making sure that workers are correctly categorized as employees or independent contractors, as exempt or salaried employees, as opposed to employees being entitled to a wage and overtime and rest breaks. That's been a focus of employment law, I think, for a number of years now. But with COVID-19 and more people working remotely, it's presented unique challenges.
Thank you, Jeff, and we'll hear more from you later on. I'm moving to Jason. Jason, thank you for unmuting yourself. Jason is my go-to person regarding visas, and who knows, for Israelis, we've been through work visas, and then we had the E2 visas, and we were very excited. And then President Trump with his new, rules about immigrations, and now with a new president coming, what do you think will be the biggest change with the new president for foreign employees?
Oh, hi everyone, I'm Jason Susser. I think there are probably a lot of changes coming in the short and long term under a new administration. I think probably not a lot will happen out of Congress, despite what people will talk about. There hasn't been meaningful immigration law in America since 2001. So we're on quite a roll. I don't know why it would stop now. But the president has a lot of authority in America to affect immigration laws. The Trump administration created over 400 changes to the immigration laws without the help of Congress. And I think the Biden administration will spend much of the first year and a half probably just undoing a lot of those rules. There are a number of executive orders in place right now affecting travel, some of which are legitimate due to COVID, and some of which are sort of legislating through presidential power. And I think we'll see a lot of that end as well. But it will take time. It's not a flip of a switch. It took the Obama administration over a year to basically get their policies from the top to the people actually adjudicating the cases at the consulates and at the offices here in the US. So it's not quick, but it is hopeful. And I think we'll see a lot of positive things for business and particularly for entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Jason. And I'm going to do some PR for Jason. Jason is a co-author of a book, Everything That Entrepreneurs Need to Know About Immigration to the US. So if your companies, any of your respected companies have a lot of employees that need to move to the US, I think that is going to be a good guidelines for you to check. So Jason is a co-author of that book. And if anyone has interest in that, I'm sure you can ask Jason later on about that in details. Thank you. I'm moving to Ingrid. Hi, Ingrid. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. So my name is Ingrid Romero, and I represent Insperity, which is a PEO here in the United States, a professional employer organization. And my role with that organization is I manage the service team. And so as such, as an outsourced HR, my team of folks handle everything from employee relations to benefits to 401k to all the things that anyone that would utilize an outsourced HR team would need reference to. So we offer strategic work. We do the gamut of all things HR.
Great. So Insperity is a huge company. It's a traded company. And some of the people that we have here in the audience represent small startup companies. And I know one of the questions people ask themselves when they start thinking about employing people in the US, especially if you are a foreigner or an outsider and you're not so sure about the rules, the regulations, the packages. There are a lot of buzzwords that, especially for someone who is not, used to the US system, like 401k and healthcare and all of these. Can you give us in maybe one or two sentences, what are the biggest differences between in-house versus outsourcing HR services?
Sure, although the first challenge of the day is to do that in one or two sentences.
I know, we'll have plenty of more time later on, but just for
Absolutely.
the sake of this plenary.
Here's what I would tease you guys with in order that we'll talk more about when we get into the breakout room or the discussion room. But what really is best is really up to the organization. Like whether you go in-house or out or like outsource it or stay in-house, I would preface that to say, because it's not just a country, but it's also 50 states, and all of which can have a say in how the benefits run and how labor law goes, and you put all of that under one umbrella. I've always been a fan of outsourcing what you can't be an expert at. And so that really is the best guidance that I could give at a high level, is stick to what you're really good at. So whatever the industry is, whatever the premise of your business is, allow, just like we do with finances sometimes or any other aspect of business, outsource an area that you need expertise in. And oftentimes, especially in the US, with ever-changing labor law and rules around benefits and rules around overtime and rules around compensation, it's best to outsource someone that is an expert at it.
Thank you, Ingrid. And it's just perfect that we have Giora sitting next to you. Listen, one of the biggest questions, and I hear it all the time from people, okay, so we are an Israeli company, startup or not. It doesn't have to be Israeli or wherever you are around the world. And we're ready to start working in the US. Where do we start, right? So we have Giora Gilad from CQ Global. Good to have you here. Can you introduce yourself and give us your take about this question?
Thank you very much, Sharon. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm looking at all these people and I understand all their challenges. CQ Global is a boutique company that does what we call consultative search. We have been around for approximately 15 years, and our focus today is in the United States. I think the main thing that we all need to remember is that the critical path for business success is in finding the right people. And when you cross oceans and borders, finding the right people becomes even more challenging. And what we believe in is that finding the right people is almost like a needle in a continent. It is, if you give it some thought, even if it's the first or second or third or even 10th or 50th person, it's still like finding a needle in a continent. And this is what we're focused on. We believe that bringing the right people is part of the success factors, and we're very passionate about it. And we are happy to share our experience with everybody on this great event. And in the breakout room, we will try to share what we call the 10 most common mistakes that companies make when looking for great talents in the US. And my riddle to everybody is, what is the first and the biggest? You'll see in the breakout room.
Okay, well, Giora, I hope that you're not going to talk only about the mistakes, but also, give some positive, thoughts about not just what the mistakes, but also the successes of companies. And really, this is what we're trying to do today. We try to help you guys, all of you here in the audience, help you at least avoid some of these mistakes, if not all of them, by providing you with some guidelines and some ideas of what you need to think before you start to employ people here in the US. And even if you are already employing people, you know, laws, regulations, they keep changing. Nobody thought about COVID-19. Nobody thought that we will, you know, work from home for so long. Who knows what else is expecting us? So planning is super important. We have next to Giora, we have Hila Hershkovitz. Thank you so much for being with us, Hila. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me.
So Hila, you are here, you know, on the seat of someone with experience moving from a big company like Amdocs that has thousands of employees, now working for the past 2 years for a startup. So we really want you to share some of your experience working for, you know, relatively small startup with the, you know, all the hoops that you had to go through, establishing, you know, the talent, where to find the talent, how to manage the talent, how to do it when, you know, your HR team is so small. Again, compare it to coming from Amdocs, where you have a much bigger HR team.
Yeah.
Can you share with us Giora mentioned, you know, mistakes. I don't want to talk about mistakes. Can you share maybe 1 or 2 biggest challenges for a startup here in the US, you know, a foreign startup, like an Israeli startup, like, you know, Mimed?
Sure. So first of all, maybe I introduce myself. So my name is Hila Hershkovitz, and I am working with Mimed as VP HR. Mimed is an Israeli startup in the biotech field, developing a test that can help distinguish between bacterial and viral infection. And we are a year from FDA approval. So in the last 6 months, we are starting to establish our activity in the US, facing a lot of challenge. And Giora was my partner in the last few months on that project. So your question, can you please repeat? What was the 2 things?
Of course. So I wanted to ask, what are the biggest challenges for a small, relatively small startup, a foreign startup, an Israeli startup working in the US in terms of HR?
Okay, so we had many challenges. One of them, first of all, where do we nucleate Mimed US? What is the best location? Choosing, there are many criteria that you took into account. How do we find the right talent to nucleate Mimed US and lead it? How do you do it in COVID time when you cannot invite the candidate here to Israel for a beer, right? To sit together for a beer. So many challenges around that, and how do we overcome that? Happy to share my experience.
Okay, great. Thank you, Hila. And we are looking forward to hear more of your experience, you know, hands-on experience here in the US later on in the breakout room. I'm jumping to Tamar Ellen. Hi, Tamar. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. Running an HR team, you know, of WeWork. It's not a startup anymore. For the past 2.5 years. Can you introduce yourself? Let's start with this.
Yes. So good morning. I'm EVP HR for WalkMe. So I don't know, it's probably no longer a startup, 800 employees globally. Prior to that, worked for Nova, another Israeli company, and actually moved to the US with them. So we acquired a company in the US, and that's when I moved to the US. So I have much smaller company in the US, so, and have experience both in larger startups and smaller companies in the US.
So you mentioned that you relocated basically with a company from Israel to the US.
Right.
And of course, you know, such a big company now, a lot of people all over the US, you know, different states, different backgrounds. We are Israelis, we have our own, you know, culture when it comes to managing people. Can you share maybe 1 or 2 aspects of the cultural differences in managing people, you know, managing Israel, being an Israeli managing an Israeli, where it's a small startup or a small environment, everybody know everyone, you know, we have the same background. Moving to the US, this is one of the biggest challenges, especially when we talk about managing people. And it's not just about HR, it's about anyone who manages, you know, other people. Can you share maybe few thoughts about that culture aspect?
So I think, I mean, there are a few things. So I think first in terms of culture and the way we do things and how we communicate and how we talk, and there's a lot of culture differences. And I think it's just being aware of it, of how things are perceived by different, it can be very different. So, you know, we go back to talking about aggressive versus assertive, right? And the difference in that, differences in project management and how things are managed, or as we say in Hebrew, yeh beseder, it will be okay, we'll just manage on the fly. So I think there are different differences that are just style that are very, very important, and understanding that. So that's like a very, very high level. But I think for me, when we acquire, I mean, one of the benefits for me was when I came to the US, I've lived before, so it wasn't the first time, but the acquisition was really helping the local managers, because we also acquired, I mean, helping the managers here who never worked with Israel before, translating some of these things, not language, but behaviors. So I did a lot of that. And I think then it goes into some of the laws also. So then there are different things. So that's like at the more soft side. But then on the other side, it's like, what can I say to an employee? What can't I? Somebody's going on a maternity leave. What do I ask them? What I don't, right? In Israel, when are you coming back? So I don't know anymore if it's legally or not, but it's asked. What are we doing in the US? Understanding that in the US, the difference, there's such also a culture difference between the states. So we have employees, and we had also in Nova, we had employees in Boise, and we had employees in Austin and employees in California. So I'm leaving even the side of what the benefits are, but even how you talk to an employee in New York is different than San Francisco, is different than Boise. So understanding those and getting the guidance. So not being afraid to ask and saying, wow, I have a call with a manager in Boise. I need some guidelines before I get on the call. To me is probably the biggest tip in terms of what should be done.
And I couldn't disagree with you, because you know, over 50 states, and each one of them has its own, you know, business culture, and of course legal. So this is super important. Thank you so much for this tip, and we will hear more from Tamar later on in the breakout rooms. I'm going to quickly move to our three moderators of the breakout rooms. I'll start with Ronit Sharir. Hi, Ronit. Thank you so much for joining us from California. Ronit has many years of experience in the HR. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hi, thank you for having me. So I moved with my family 9 years ago to live in California in Silicon Valley. In Israel, I was mostly involved in OD, coaching, training, change management, capacity building projects. And since we moved here, I'm invested in community building and connecting people and opportunities and organizations, 2 opportunities in the US. And hope we'll have a very fruitful session today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ronit. Ronit is going to be the moderator of our first breakout room, where we are going to have Giora and Hila together as our speakers. We're moving to the next moderator, Yotam Zucker. Hi, Yotam. Welcome from Israel.
Thank you.
Sounds like the Eurovision.
Thank you, Sharon, and all the participants. So my name is Yotam Zucker. I'm heading the business development at CQ Global. I will manage the second roundtable, managing your US employee, together with Tamar and Ingrid. And actually, I wanted to share with you that we sent a survey to all the participants today. So I will quickly share some of the interesting results. And one of the result of this survey is that the main challenge of the people here today in the Corona time is actually the remote management and how to build and maintain the company culture. Actually, this is interesting that most of the company don't see such a high difficulty or difference than before in convincing new talents to join their company. And we also ask about the remote interview skills of the hiring manager due to the fact that not only the HR department is interviewing, but also the hiring managers need to know how to interview from remote and using Zoom. So most of you have answered that the skills of hiring manager are not very sufficient. And the last thing is the practical tip that people have shared, that you really need to understand the cultural differences and bring them up right at the start. And definitely you need to use technology and understand the other side. And we will discuss more about it in the roundtable.
Great, thank you, Yotam, and thank you for taking the lead on the poll and the survey that we shared with you, and thank you for all of you that shared your thoughts. Absolutely, and Tamar also talked about it, and I saw Hila also nodding her head. Cultural differences are big, are a major obstacle to some people. You know, it starts with language, and then it goes to body language, and of course the legal issues and what can be said and how you interview, and even once you have employees, how you deal with different, you know, day-to-day activities. Even within one company where you have people based all over the world. And again, we talked about it earlier, and I think that we will keep talking about, you know, working from home for the next few months. Nobody knows for how long. I know that at least here in California now, we are slowly closing even more than what we somehow saw that things are getting open. Also in Israel, it's a roller coaster that will stay with us for the next few months. And of course, it has an implication about your employees, you know, their emotional state, and of course, all the legal issues around it, what can be said, you know, if they decide to move to a different state, how you handle it. We had prior conversations about salaries. Can you know, lower their salaries, when you do it, how you do it, why you do it. We'll talk about all of this in the breakout rooms. I want to move on to Tammy, my associate from Israel, from the Israeli office. Tammy is going to manage the breakout room about the legal issues between Jeff and Jason. Hi, Tammy, thank you for being with us.
Hi, so as Sharon mentioned, I'm here calling in from Israel, but I have lived in the United States for long periods of time, in California, in Boston, and in Chicago. Actually, even a short one in Florida. So I have a passion for connecting Israel and US businesses. I also have a business background. I worked for 7 years at Intel, 6 years at Nestle Osem, and had experience with startups as well. So I bring to life the startup and corporation connection. And I'm very passionate about this topic of how we manage the employees correctly. And as Jeff and Jason will be with me in the legal breakout room, I can't wait to discuss these topics with you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tammy. Okay, so this was great. Some sort of an overview, so we'll know what we are going to talk today. We are going to break into our discussion rooms. So some of you, during the registration process, let us know where you want to be in terms of